What I'm going to show you now is the part of the game which happened in the round 5 of Chess Olympiad. Ukraine and Hungary played, and on the board 1 we had a clash between Vasyl Ivanchuk and Richard Rapport. Here Ivanchuk played a4. And the point is, if black takes on a4, there's gonna be bishop takes b7, take the rook and win the game. So Rapport doesn't take on a4, and he goes in, knight e3, tries to lure the king out. Gives a check. Now black is a piece down, but he has some ideas against white's king, so he goes knight a6. He wants to get to c5 and get rook c8, ideas like queen b3 or some discovered check with the knight. So now to stop knight c5, Ivanchuk plays rook c4, but now the bishop on d5 is exposed. So Rapport plays rook a d8, trying to go e6 and pick up this bishop. So Ivanchuk anticipates this by bishop e5, trying to meet e6 with queen f6, with double threat, queen g7 checkmate, queen h8 checkmate. But Rapport here continues, rook d5, king e4, and now he eliminates the bishop. King takes e5 to keep defending this pawn. And now black is an exchange down, but the king on e5 is just a huge factor here. So black goes queen e2, hits the rook. If queen moves to f4 now black will play f6 and the king gets even in more trouble. When you take on e6, there's gonna be queen d3, and I advise you to research this. So white plays rook d4 here. And now comes the brilliant move, in Karpov style, knight b8, trying to get to c6. What can white do? How to stop knight c6? Ivanchuk tried rook d6, but now it allows queen c4. Now the king is completely stuck on e5, and Ivanchuk was on seconds, thinking, but the best he could find, the move he played eventually, was queen f4. But he flagged. But queen f4 allows f6, as we saw before. But this time king doesn't have escape, so queen has to capture, but now you can take on c3, rook covers, and you take on f6, take, knight c6, and that's the end. The best way to continue was probably to go rook hd1, but even here, black would go knight c6, for example, one of the many possible lines, target g2 and a4, and black would be a piece up, with the king still being on e5 very exposed. So what went wrong for Ivanchuk in this game? Well, in this position, white had an option to go queen e2, to stop knight d3 and all this madness that happened, and offer a queen trade in which white would be slightly better because of the bishop pair. Second moment was this one, where white played bishop e5. Instead, he should have played bishop h6. Meet e6 with capturing the rook. First of all, if you move the rook, there's gonna be checkmate on g7. So e6 was a good move here, but after bishop f8, you cannot take on d5, because queen takes, and on ed there's gonna be rook c8, with double threat, bishop h6 or bishop a3, picking up the queen. So black has to bail out with something like knight c5, but simply bishop c5, and white has two rooks and the bishop for a queen, which is more than enough. So after e6 takes, king takes, and now white can play e4, and I'm not sure about this position. I'm not sure how to assess it. White's king is still in trouble, still a bit exposed, but it feels like black cannot deliver this final punch. And after bishop e5, things went south. After e6, queen f6, rook d5, and all of this, rook e5. Just to mention that queen c2 would be a very bad check, because after king f3, now threat is very strong. And rook e5 has less power than before. Now the king is much safer on f3 than it was on e5 later, so white would survive this. He took on e5 and things became very ugly after. Queen e2. Here queen had to stay on f6, because if you move it to f4, I mentioned f6, king e6 and queen d3. So when white blocks the d file by rook d4, there's gonna be capture on c3 and plenty of threats. One of them is knight c7, one of them is queen c6, one of them is rook e8 maybe. So many options for black. So he tried with rook d4, but now came this brilliant move, knight b8. Ivanchuk tried this, but after queen c4, It was just very hard to defend this. The king is completely out of squares, nothing that white could do here, and he went for queen f4, but he flagged. But even without flagging, this is lost. Let me know in the comments which game do you want me to cover next, if you have any wishes, and I'll see you very soon with a new video.